Good morning. It's Sunday, August 4th. And a few days ago, I read an article about the 3 prisoners who have been held at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba for almost 20-something years because they were the instrumental people who planned the 9/11 attack. And yes, it's been 23 years since those people attacked us, and I don't know how many years they've been incarcerated at Guantanamo Bay. But for some peculiar reason in our justice system, we can't bring them into the States to get a trial, and they're hanging there in Guantanamo Bay. And now there was a controversial plea deal where the 3 were going to admit that they planned these attacks and executed these attacks on 9/11. And if they were given a deal where they didn't have to face the death penalty, they would admit their guilt. And so somebody has said, okay, we'll do that. But the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, withdrew the controversial plea deal for the 3 men accused of planning the 9/11 attacks. He said, no, these people can't get off free. They have to go to trial, and they have to face the death penalty. So let me review for you exactly what happened on 9/11 almost 23 years ago. On that Tuesday, suicide attackers seized U.S. passenger jets and crashed them into 2 New York skyscrapers, killing thousands of people. I don't have to remind you that this was one of the most traumatic events of the century. And it involved, and that's covering the whole world beyond America. The 4 planes flew over the eastern U.S. after being seized by small teams of hijackers. They were then used as guided missiles to crash into landmark buildings in Washington and New York. The first one hit the North Tower of the Twin Towers. 2 planes struck the Twin Towers at the World Trade Center in New York. They hit the towers around 9:03 in the morning, and the buildings were set on fire, trapping people in the upper floors. And in less than 2 hours, both 110-story buildings collapsed. And at 9:37, the 3rd plane destroyed the western face of the Pentagon, the giant headquarters down in Washington, D.C., where the military has their offices. And the 4th plane crashed in a field in Pennsylvania after the passengers fought back. And the people on that plane died in a field. And many surmised that the hijackers had meant to use that plane to attack the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. So all in all, 2,977 people, not counting the 19 hijackers, lost their lives. And most of those lives were lost in New York. And all 246 passengers and crew aboard the 4 planes were killed. At the Twin Towers alone, 2,606 people died immediately on that day or later on because of injuries. And 125 people died at the Pentagon. The youngest victim was a 2-year-old girl, Christine Lee Hansen, who died on one of the planes with her parents. The oldest person who died was 80-year-old Robert Norton, who was on another plane with his wife Jacqueline, and they were going to a wedding. When the first plane struck, an estimated 17,400 people were in the towers, and nobody above the impact zone in the North Towers survived. But 18 people managed to escape from several floors somewhere in the building. And citizens from 77 different countries were among the casualties. And New York City lost 441 first responders. Those were the brave men and women of the police and fire department who ran into those buildings attempting to save the citizens that were trapped there. And there were many thousands of people who later developed illnesses connected to the attacks. And that was the many firefighters who had worked in the toxic debris. And it was proven that the Islamist extremist network called Al-Qaeda planned the attacks from Afghanistan. And they were led by Osama bin Laden. You remember him. We paid him back. We killed him. And in each group of people who hijacked the plane, one of those people received pilot training. And they received that pilot training at flying schools in the U.S. So there it is, this carefully planned attack on us. And 15 of the attackers were Saudis, like bin Laden himself. And 2 were from the United Arab Emirates, and 1 was from Egypt, and 1 was from Lebanon. And I could go on and on and on, but I think that's enough for now. Because it's coming up on the 23rd anniversary. And it's about time those 3 people who have been incarcerated in Cuba came to this country and faced the punishment, the death penalty. So I leave you with that this morning. A crazy story. 23 years, no justice done. Have a great day. Bye.